Last class we started the activity Modeling Random Behavior Part 1. For this activity what we're interested in is how many times heads will come up if we flip a coin 10 times. So we want to model this situation so that we can examine sort of how often we can expect various results. For instance, what percentage of the time will we have 5 out of 10 coins turn up heads? Now, anytime we want to model some sort of random occurrence, in Tinkerplots, we are going to use a sampler to do it. So I need to click on the sampler button and pull the sampler down into the workspace. Click on the sampler and drag it down. Now, what comes up right now is something that looks kind of like an urn with balls in it. That's called the mixer. There are other kinds of samplers we can use, and this time we want to use the spinner. So I click on the spinner button, which is inside the sampler, and then drag it up into the main body of the sampler. Click, drag. Now I have a sampler with 2 outcomes that are labeled A and B. Now with my coin flip, when I flip a coin, each individual coin flip has 2 possible outcomes. They're heads and tails. So I want to relabel A and B as heads and tails. To do this, I just click on the names and then type what I want the name to be on top. Head, tail. Now I can see that heads is taking up 2/3 of this spinner. And I don't want a 2/3 chance of getting heads. I want a 50-50 chance of it being heads or tails. So I need to change this so that it reflects the right percentage. To do that, I click on this little downward facing triangle button here and tell it to show percent. Now I can type the percentage that I want for the outcome. So for heads, I want 50%. And it'll change the tails to be 50%, so the sum will stay 100%. Now, since each coin flipped is only going to have 1 outcome, heads or tails, I change the draw to 1. And if I wanted to flip just 1 coin at a time, I'd change the repeat to 1. So just to see what this does, if I press run, it'll spin, and the first time it spun and gave me an outcome of head. Now let's spin it again. Press run. Got heads again. Again. Press run. It spun again and gave me a tails this time. Okay, so it's generating outcomes. Now if I want to know how many heads I'd get out of 10 flips, I could run this 10 times and count the number of heads. Or I can change it so that it runs 10 at a time. And to do that, I change the repeat to 10. Since I'm interested in the number of heads out of 10 flips, this is going to represent what's called 1 trial of 10 flips. Now, before I run this model, I just want to make it so that Tinkerplots is going to run a little bit faster, so we don't have to watch it spin around so much. So I'm going to slide this button here from medium over to fastest so that it will run much faster. Now, if I press run on the sampler, it's going to give me the outcomes from 10 coin flips. And there they are. Now what I'm really interested in, my result, is the number of heads out of those 10 coin flips. Now I can count them up myself here, or I can get Tinkerplots to count them if I make a plot. So we're going to make Tinkerplots count them. So I click onto the attribute that I want to plot. Here it's those outcomes. And I click on the plot button and drag it down into Tinkerplots. And now I've got a nice plot, except for one thing. It's completely disorganized. Just going to slide things around so we can see it a little bit better. What I really want is to be able to separate it into heads and tails and know which is which. To do that, I click on one dot, slide it to the right, and now it separates the heads and tails. If I want to make it look more presentable, I can stack those dots up with this stack button, vertical stack. And then I can also have Tinkerplots count the dots for me, which isn't very hard to do myself right now. But if I had a lot more dots, you can imagine that would be really important. So I'm going to have Tinkerplots count by using this n to tell me the number of heads and the number of tails. So you can see I have 3 heads in this trial of 10 flips. Okay, now if I want to know how often 5 would occur, what percentage of the time, I really can't answer that question from one trial. All I know is that, well, this one set of 10 flips didn't end up with 5 heads. Not very helpful. I need to run this many, many times. Now, to get Tinkerplots to do that for us, we are going to collect the number of heads. Okay, so I'm going to collect the number of heads. So the way that I do that is I find the number of heads in my plot. Here it's this number 3, and I click on it. And it puts a box around it. And then I come over it with and I right-click and collect statistic. This creates a new table called the History of Results table, where it's just recording that result, the number of heads. Now I want it to do this whole process a total of 100 times, which means I need to do 99 more trials that I'm going to collect the number of heads from. So to do that, I change this number in my History of Results table to tell it how many more times I want it to run the model, 99, and then I press the collect button. And it runs. And what it keeps doing is it keeps doing a trial of 10 flips and recording the number of heads that occur out of the 10 in this History of Results table. Now, if I want to get a sense for how often I would see a 5 out of 10 come up heads, I could scroll through these results and try to count the number of 5s that I have. But it's a lot easier to get a sense for how likely each of these results is to occur by looking at a plot of these results. So I'm going to click on the column that has the results in it, and I'm going to click on Plot button and drag a plot down. So here's my plot. Now once again, it's not very informative when I first pull it down, so I want to separate it so that I have one result in each bin. So I drag my plot this way. And I can stack it up. And this gives me a sense for how often each of the different results will occur. I'm going to resize that window a little bit. There we go. Now, if I want to actually count the number in each stack, I can get Tinkerplots to do that for me. If I do it like this, where there are no lines, little vertical bin lines, then all it's going to do is tell me the total number of dots I have, which is 100, which makes sense because I did 100 total trials of 10 coin flips each. So what I need to do is I need to put the lines back in here. To do that, I can click on this box that goes around the 9 at the end of my axis. If you have another number there, like if your largest number is 8 or 10 or whatever it is, just click on the box on the largest number and change the bin width. So here I want my bin width to be 1. And now it tells me how many of each of these results occurred. So I can see that in 22 out of the 100 trials, I saw 5 out of 10 of my outcomes come up heads. In 9, I saw 9, 1 out of 100 times. I saw 2 heads out of 10, 6 out of 100 times. It gives me a sense for how sort of unusual each of these results would be. Hopefully this helps you sort of remember what we were doing in class, gives you a chance to try to work through some of the details in Tinkerplots if you didn't get a chance to finish up, and refreshes your memory so that you're ready to talk about this activity some more in class tomorrow. Have a good night.